There's a feeling that Taurus knows very well, but can rarely name. It's not anxiety. It's not exactly fear. It's something like a very subtle tremor in the ground, that almost imperceptible vibration that comes from below, as if something enormous were moving in the depths, right beneath everything you've spent years building. And you try to ignore it because you're a Taurus, because you know how to build, because every time the world around you crumbled, you went there, brick by brick, and rebuilt it. Not in a hurry, methodically. With that patience that seems supernatural to those who aren't you. This is your deepest identity, not the stubbornness everyone mentions, that image of someone difficult, resistant, inflexible. It's that silent ability to create solidity where there was nothing before. You arrived in places with broken ground and brought stability simply by existing. This is real. This is you. You carry this with a quiet pride, which doesn't need to be declared because it's engraved in everything you touch. You've built a life, not just a place to live. You've built an entire structure, habits that work, bonds with real depth, a routine that has a smell, a texture, its own weight. The things you've built have a body. You can touch them, and that matters, because what has no form, what has no visible root, still scares you in a way you rarely admit. And that's exactly why what's happening now hurts in a way that none of your tools can match. Because God is taking you to a different place. Not the way you planned, not in the time frame you mentally arranged, not through the door you left open for when the time came. It's happening from the other side, from the corner you closed off, locked, and placed something heavy in front of. And here's the first thing that needs to be said, before anything else. This is not punishment. But you still don't truly believe it, do you? You understand it intellectually. You've heard someone say that every change of course has a purpose, that God removes what no longer fits, that every loss carries an embedded preparation. You heard it. You nodded. And at the same time, somewhere very quiet inside you, you continue with your hands clenched around what is being moved. Because Taurus doesn't give up. This isn't stubbornness. It's loyalty on an almost spiritual level. You feel that letting go is betrayal. That change is destroying everything that once had meaning. That if you opened your hand now, everything you've built would retroactively lose its value. But there's a question slowly growing beneath all of this. A question you may not have clearly formulated yet, but it's there, pulsating. What if the problem isn't what God is taking away from you? What if the problem is the size of what you've learned to hold? Here's what nobody really explains about Taurus. Your greatest strength and your greatest obstacle have exactly the same face. They were born from the same source. You built beautiful things, solid, real, true. And along the way, without realizing it, you also built something that wasn't in the original plan. A version of security that increasingly resembled a border, an invisible limit that defines where the safe world ends. And God is on the other side of that border now. Not with thunder, not with catastrophe, with that gentle tremor you already know, with that feeling that something needs to change that you can't quite name yet, with that discomfort that appears in the quietest hours, when you have nothing left to build, and suddenly you're alone with the question that won't stop nagging, to grow. This calling doesn't appear shouting your name. It appears as a weariness that doesn't go away with rest, as a dissatisfaction without a clear address, as the persistent feeling that you should be somewhere that doesn't yet exist on any map you have. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. For Taurus, this book isn't about abandoning what you've built. It's about understanding that your ability to build has always been a spiritual gift, and that there's a real difference between building to protect yourself and building to serve what you were called to be. This distinction changes how you read what's happening now. Not as loss, as expansion. Not as an end, as the foundation of something your current architecture isn't yet able to support. You're in that moment right now, still processing, with the discomfort still active. This is the moment when most people close the window and go do something else. But that later, you know better than anyone, sometimes doesn't arrive at the right time. Sometimes the window closes on its own. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Leave a comment below. What is the thing you find most difficult to let go of, even when you feel God is asking you to do so? There is a mechanism within Taurus so sophisticated that even he rarely realizes it is operating. It is the mechanism of anticipatory protection. Before any threat appears, Taurus has already begun building its defenses. It has already erected internal walls. It has already created calculated distances. It has already organized its life in such a way that pain, if it comes, will encounter multiple layers to penetrate before reaching its true core. It's an impressive piece of protective architecture, and it works, for a while, very well. The problem begins when the armor fits so well that you forget you're wearing it. When the shield you erected to protect yourself from the unpredictable starts to weigh so much that you stop moving. Not because you don't want to, because the accumulated weight of everything you've built to feel safe has come to define the perimeter of where you can exist. And God, who respects no boundaries, continues calling from the other side. God's call to Taurus rarely comes as a violent rupture. It comes as a gentle expansion that the current structure cannot support, like water slowly rising inside a dead-end room. Not to drown, but to force a movement that Taurus wouldn't choose on its own. And the different place that this movement reveals is a state of being that Taurus has never fully inhabited, the state of existing without the ground you built. Not permanently, but long enough to discover something no building can teach you, that you don't need the foundation you built to exist. That the solidity you've spent your whole life searching for in the outside world was already within you before anything was built. It predates you. It's the root, not the walls. But Taurus doesn't believe that easily. Taurus believes in what it can see, in what it can touch and verify. Abstract faith, the kind that lives in something you don't control, that's Taurus's biggest boundary. Not out of weakness, quite the opposite, because Taurus is too strong to feel comfortable depending on something it can't hold on to. And that's where the most disturbing paradox of this story lies. The different place where God is leading you demands exactly what is most difficult for you. Not effort, you have effort to spare. Not patience, you have patience that no one can match. It demands trust without guarantee. The kind of faith that has no texture, that cannot be stacked or organized. That's scary. Of course it's scary, but there's something you need to know about this fear. It's not a sign that you're wrong to feel the calling. It's a sign that the calling is real. This discomfort of being called to territory that cannot be controlled, Taurus carries this in their body, almost physically. And most tools out there treat this feeling as a problem to be solved, when in fact it is the most accurate sign that God uses to indicate that expansion is near. In the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, there is a specific path for Taurus to understand how to navigate these border moments when old security no longer reaches what is being asked. As real practice, rooted in the deep nature of your sign, not as theory. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There is a form of faith that Taurus has always practiced, but has never called by its proper name. When Taurus plants something, they don't demand immediate results. When they nurture a relationship, they don't expect a return on the same day. When they decide to build something, they don't need to see the final result to continue. They continue because they trust in the accumulation, because they understand at the most visceral level that things that last were done with patience. That's faith, not the performative faith of speeches, the practical and silent faith of those who persevere even without certainty of visible results. Taurus possesses this in quantities most people can't imagine. The problem is that this faith has a built-in condition. It works very well when Taurus has some control over the process. When it can see the steps, adjust, intervene. It's the faith of the farmer who plants and waits, but who goes to see the soil every day, check the moisture, remove anything that's hindering growth, and now God is asking something different. He is asking Taurus to plant in soil that he did not choose, without being able to intervene, without the daily check-in visits. It's like asking the most careful farmer in the world to scatter seeds to the wind and trusting that they will find the right soil without his supervision. And here's what this farmer doesn't yet know. The wind knows the soil better than he does. It's not carrying the seeds away, it's carrying them deeper to fields that aren't on the map, to the land that's been waiting for those exact seeds since before he was born. This is the faith that God is asking of Taurus right now, not the faith of control, the faith of the wind. And it's more natural than it seems, because it lives in the same root as patience, in the same place where Taurus learned to wait without giving up. What's being asked is not for Taurus to become another person, it's to use what they already have in a way they haven't fully tried yet. If you think about your real history, the one you know entirely from the inside, you can identify at least one moment when you lost something that seemed essential, not optional, something that had become part of your inner fabric. And it hurt in a specific way that only Taurus understands. It's not the sharp pain of a sudden tear. It's the long, dull pain of something being slowly removed, suddenly leaving solid walls with holes in the middle. And then, not immediately, not in a cinematic way, then when the dust settled, there was something different there, something you would never have chosen if the choice had been solely yours. This is the pattern that God works in the life of Taurus, and it is more sophisticated and careful than it seems at first glance. God doesn't remove things to leave them empty. He removes them so that the space that opens up can receive what didn't fit before. And Taurus, because it fills everything that exists so completely, rarely has room for the new while the old is still in place. Pruning is not neglect. It is preparation for a flowering that the current structure could not support without cracking. Winter is not punishment. It is the period when the tree concentrates everything in its roots, where no one is looking, so that spring will be different from everything that came before. And Taurus, who has always known how to wait, now needs to learn to wait without seeing, to trust what is happening in the roots. This pruning process that God sometimes imposes on the life of Taurus has layers that most content doesn't map out. Because it's not just about accepting loss, it's about distinguishing what is being taken away to expand from what you are letting go of out of fear. In the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose, there is a specific look at how Taurus was created to receive renewal without losing the essence of who it is. How to get through winter without confusing pruning with abandonment. This distinction will change how you interpret what you are experiencing now. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. The strongest being in the zodiac, the one who endures, who sustains, who carries weights that would bring down anyone else, is precisely the being who most needs to learn to surrender. Not out of weakness, not because the strength isn't real, but because there's a kind of power that only activates when you stop using all your energy to hold back what's being moved. Think of a river. When it encounters a huge rock in its path, it doesn't try to push it. It doesn't waste energy on a battle it can't win head-on. It finds another way, slowly, without drama, with a patience the rock will never have. And that path around the rock, it's almost always the most beautiful. It creates waterfalls, forms beaches, generates life in places the original route would never reach. Surrendering the river is not defeat. It's intelligence on a level that brute force cannot achieve. Taurus carries a version of this river within itself, a profound flexibility hidden just beneath the appearance of rigidity. Those who don't know Taurus see the exterior, the firm ground, the refusal to yield. But those who live close know, when Taurus finally changes, the transformation is complete. It's not a tactical concession. It's a real metamorphosis, a change that goes to the root. The problem is getting to that point. Taurus's resilience has a very powerful internal logic. Every time they've given in the past and been hurt, this logic has filed the event away as evidence. Over time, the amount of archived evidence becomes so large that giving in seems impossible, not just emotionally, but almost rationally. As if their personal history demonstrates that keeping their grounded is always safer. But what this logic fails to account for are the moments when being moved was what saved everything. The moments when the change that Taurus resisted with all his might ended up being the turning point he never imagined he needed. The moments when the loss that seemed unfair opened space for something he wouldn't have asked for because he didn't even know it existed. What happens when Taurus stops resisting God's call is not dissolution, it's the exact opposite. It's the moment when Taurus's strength, all of it, without waste, begins to flow in the right direction. When the energy that was being used to hold back what was being moved is completely released to build what is being called into existence. It's the difference between a dammed river and a flowing river. They are both rivers. They both have the same water, but only one of them reaches the sea. The surrender that Taurus is being called upon to make is not a weakness that needs to be overcome with willpower. It is a wisdom that needs to be activated from within. And there is a huge difference between the two. In the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose lies the specific map of how Taurus's strength multiplies and is not lost when aligned with the purpose for which it was created. Not as abstract theory, as real practice anchored in the concrete nature of Taurus at the level of the decisions it faces every day. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. And then we arrived at the different place, not as an ending, as an opening. The different place where God is leading you doesn't exist on any map you've ever held. It can't be planned with the advance notice you'd prefer. It can't be built before it's inhabited. It only exists in the version of you that emerges on the other side of this journey. This different place is who you become when you stop using all your strength to maintain what has already fulfilled its cycle. There is a version of Taurus that most people, including Taurus itself, never fully get to know. A version that doesn't need a constructed foundation to be solid, that doesn't need a familiar routine to be stable, that discovered that solidity was never in the things it built, it was in the root, and the root goes nowhere when things change. You've lived through times when everything that seemed essential was taken away, and you survived. You didn't survive despite being a Taurus, you survived precisely because of that. Because your roots go too deep for any superficial pruning to destroy them. What God is doing now is no different from what He has done before in your history. It is greater because you are greater than you were last time. The expansion is proportionally greater because the tree has grown. What is being called to flourish now no longer fits where you were. The unfamiliar place is not a cruel test. It is the most careful preparation God has for someone He knows can bear the weight of the abundance to come. And Taurus, made to create abundance, to generate solidity, to transform what it touches into something real and lasting, was made exactly for what is coming. To receive, one must first open one's hand. To flourish in new territory, one must first trust that the roots will reach there as well. To inhabit a different place, one must first let go of the old place with the same loyalty with which it was built, honoring what was, without needing it to be eternal to have been true. God will take you to a different place, not to distance you from who you are, but to show you the greatness of who you've always been. A greatness that the old place no longer had room to contain. When you get there, you'll understand that you weren't taken away from yourself. He was finally taken inside.